Good day, good day. Get into spaces mode here because it's nearly time. Hope you guys are doing good. I'm doing a little extra good today. After helping a friend get onboarded, that was a treat. I haven't onboarded anybody in a while, so I was overdue. The woman I onboarded is probably 65 years old. She just wants to travel. Just wants to travel with her kids. And I would love to see that for her. And I think she will be able to travel with her kids once the greatest currencies go to the moon and back. Let's do it. Good evening. Lively around here.
What's up, Banana?
Hey, Zen. How's it going?
It's going. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It sounds like you got a house full of kids already.
Oh, he's on a sugar rush right now.
Just wait till he has a little sister.
Do you know what the Nothing Bun Cakes are? It's like a brand. It's like a little store.
No.
Have you heard of it?
No.
It might be only in California, but they make these bun cakes that are really moist and good. And my wife got us these buntinis. They're like little cupcakes, but my son ate two of them, so now which two is a lot for someone who's only 1.5, so he's going crazy right now.
Yeah. Yep, I can imagine. Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, good. Cool. Let's see. Charles doing your own research says there's a moon trip loading for us.
Yeah, definitely. Super excited for the news today, right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm excited. I think that starts a 60-day clock. Unfortunately, 60 days for that, like nothing can probably happen, but could. I mean, I wonder what the possibilities are. I dropped in the chat nuclear herbs. We might as well read this tweet. From Nuclear Herbs. He says, short version. Judge got the green light from the parties to formally enter the dismissal. Expect it tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. 60-day appeal clock starts from that date. But if they didn't amend, the chances of them appealing are basically zero. And they didn't amend. So we're not like done, but I can't put it into words. Maybe you can.
Pretty much a 0% chance. So maybe we'll give it a 5% chance.
I'll put it in. I'll put it in Papa Boner's terms. Greater than zero, not zero, but greater than zero, and that's very small. A very small possibility, but greater than zero. So, yeah, but anyhow, the response in the market was positive. I think people are now more willing to speculate on RH products, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I think a confirmation on the market and then also a confirmation on RH tokens not trending downwards anymore will be even more impactful for PulseChain. But this is definitely a nice piece to get behind us as well.
Yeah. Yep. It's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, we have like a few major things that if we could get most of those major things on our side, it's probably going to feel like a whole new place over here. You know, price of PulseChain doing a little bit better, other RH tickers doing a little bit better as well. If Richard started streaming again, I think a lot of people are obviously hoping for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
The market obviously starting to go up, which that was something that happened yesterday/today. I don't know where Bitcoin's at right now, but I think we got to 88 at one point.
This morning we're at 88. It's at 87.3 right now,
which is still a pretty good hold, right? Like they were holding pretty good. So that was something that needed to happen. So it definitely seems like, you know, if we had a checklist of things we're looking to happen this month or, you know, in the near future, we're starting to check a few of those boxes.
Yeah. I'd like to see Ethereum do more. Hopefully it will.
Yeah, that, you know, that's still one thing that I think a lot of people are looking at is this like more of a Bitcoin cycle, right? Does Bitcoin make its all-time high? Even Bitcoin make another high? But does alt and Ethereum kind of just watch from the sidelines?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think an altcoin season is to come, but you know, obviously nothing's guaranteed, and I think that's what a lot of people are still a little fearful of like, oh, you know, mainstream is really just paying attention to Bitcoin right now, not alts and ETH. But really quick with ETH, I think having some positive movement against Bitcoin can switch that really quick, and then it's just like, oh crap, ETH is really discounted right now comparatively.
Mm-hmm.
Which we're bonded to ETH heavily, so that's what we want.
Yeah. We onboarded a new retail buyer today. I onboarded this gal, and I was thinking to myself, boy, is retail coming now? Well, she could have came 2 months ago, you know, for all I know, and it's just one person, but I don't know, maybe it's an indicator. And she got in at a great time, in my opinion, bottom of the cycle. PulseChain is, you know, 30% of SAC price, and I think she's going to do well. But I wonder if it's an indication that retail's coming. I don't know.
I definitely think she got a good price, right? You know, people sacrificed, 3 years ago now, or 4 years ago now, at a price 3 times greater. So she necessarily didn't even have to wait the 3 years, 4 years, and she got a three times discount. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yep, it's a good deal. Yep.
Let's go, everybody. SEC case dismissed. Who's ready to start the marathon?
I am. Kay Hudson says now we are unshackled.
Yeah, it's definitely not only unshackled. Like I think, like it's not even unshackled. It's like the fact that we won against them too, which is a huge accomplishment for Richard, and I think really makes our chain stand out in comparison against other chains out there. You know, quite well. I think RH made a tweet today where he was like showcasing a lot of layer 2s and stuff like that, and just kind of talking about how they're not as good. I think a lot of people don't realize how many layer 2s there are, and really their purpose is definitely insignificant at this point, especially with Ethereum's gas price is so low. And I think that RH's game plan definitely is probably switched, right? Like previously it was, hey, we're going to save Ethereum from their gas prices, which is just no longer the case. But for us, I think that creates a very, very unique opportunity of like just the robustness of our chain, right? Like there's a long list of just all these layer twos or other blockchains that have issues. Even the best blockchains have issues. But as far as like the tools that we have at our disposal as a community is just amazing, right? Just such a robust system, a DEX that is really robust and works well, the blockchain that's really robust and works well, and we know works well. And now that we're not only unshackled, but beating the SEC, I think just really sets us up for a lot of growth in the future. And the products that we have to grow with are like really, really good, right? Like we can do amazing things, but if the tools that we have are crappy tools, like it's like almost sometimes goes unnoticed, or, you know, like any tool, if you buy a tool and it breaks on you a month in, like you're like, oh damn, this was a lot of wasted effort. But the fact that our system is so robust, like I strongly feel that like a lot of our efforts as far as, you know, onboarding the PulseChain and Hex and pTGC, UFO, PulseChain in general, right? We have such a strong tool set to just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And I think that like whole message and idea is super overlooked. And I think that's why Richard keeps bringing it up, right? Like as of right now, people are not caring about quality of product and robustness and trustlessness and how well they work and that they don't have downtime and this and that. And in the near future, I think it's going to become very noticeable how important it really is, especially once green candles start to come. Because if you get the price appreciation with the good system, it becomes quite obvious, right? Like right now, it's not obvious because of the red candles. So it's really like diluting how good the products actually are because people are just looking at the price. But if the price goes right in the right direction, then you start to be like, oh, you know, look how nice these products are. And the price is going up. It starts to become a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah. I'm impressed with how we held since some of the funds were bridged over last Friday. I mean, there didn't appear to be a lot of dumping, you know, as you would perhaps expect, but it may be because we have been shaken out for so long. You know, maybe the ultimate goal of shaking out the chain is to, you know, eliminate weak hands, and maybe we achieved that objective. And so that little pump that we had last Friday night, the little bridging over pump, you know, it seemed to sustain itself from my perspective. What do you think about it?
I wouldn't say we're sitting great, right? Like I definitely would like to see, you know, that money move over and us have more green candles than we did. And even just the good news that we have right now, I think that, you know, we could have even had a little bit more green candles from that as well. But I think the steady growth is really important, right? Like the fact that now we've created the bottom and we're just slowly moving in the upwards trajectory. Like if that's 10% every other day or something like that, like 10%, it starts to add up over time, right? And if it's sustainable and, you know, if it finally produces a chart that we could actually use for onboarding, I think it's going to mean a lot over time.
Yeah, 100%, man. If we did 10%, if we only do 3% a day, it's amazing how fast that stacks up. You know, Paul Sachs made a really good point here. He says, from April 21st onward, that's from today, the appeal is only towards the judge's decision in the case. The appeal is only toward the judge, her decision, not the SEC against RH with new evidence of reformulating their claims. Judge Amon did her research. Bullish for 2025. Those are his comments. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. Yep, people are happy. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely just a relief, right? I feel like everyone kind of previously was excited about the same thing, and then we got the bad news about the appeal. But this time around, it definitely feels like it's more cleanly shut down, and that there isn't going to be anything that comes back later on, which gives us this clean slate to keep moving off of. Another thing that's nice about here is we're lower right now. The last time we got this information, we're actually at higher prices.
True.
So since we're lower, we can actually start a larger uptrend. And knowing RH, someone who measures from the bottom, you know, that's technically going to equal more green, which equals more bragging, I guess. Which, not that the bragging's the best thing, but just the opportunity that presented itself at those low prices, not only with, you know, PulseChain Hex, PulseX, Inc., etc., but even some other great assets on chain, like, you know, obviously pTGC and UFO is what the space is for. So, of course, put those in there, right? The fact that, you know, that bad news came out and it started to create the downtrend on the chart, or we might have already been downtrending already, but it created cheap prices, right? And some people got to take advantage of those really discounted prices. I'd say the most obvious person that got to take advantage of those discounted prices isn't even a person, it's the pTGC buying bird.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So, it, you know, yeah, I think it hurt a little bit as far as price, but the pTGC system definitely used those discounted prices to its advantage. I think just in the last week, we've probably bought and burned $250,000 of pTGC.
Wow.
Or maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks
Okay.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see that broken down on look into pTGC or any site. That'd be cool to see that broken down. We talked about that Saturday, didn't we?
God, we looked at a lot, and I actually found Kong made me find. He posted in our chat today a picture, and we're like, where did this picture come from? Like, I don't see this anywhere. And then he showed us where you could find it, and it was like hidden in a spot on the site that I didn't even know you could open up.
Okay.
But yeah, now there's like just more stuff he's added in the last week. I don't know if it has that information, like the amount of value that's gotten bought and burnt daily. It would definitely be interesting to pull up.
I think I remember seeing. I got to go back and look at last Saturday's stream because I too was in looking to pTGC today, and I was trying to find those beautiful graphs that we were all Googling over, and I was like, I can't find it.
Yeah, I don't know if you have your screen up. I could hop on your YouTube and kind of walk you through it real quick where to find them if you didn't.
Yeah, please, may as well. And we can show anybody that didn't see them on Saturday. So this is updates, guys, to look into ptgc.com. And we're going next level here. This is good. And Kong and I are going to meet Zen. I think we're meeting tomorrow. And I want to work on I don't know if I mentioned this on Saturday, but I want to work on a share rate calculator for the site. So,
yeah, no, that'd be awesome.
And the idea, Zen, is because like I have UFO shares, and I've kind of figured out or gotten some idea that if I unpair, what it would cost me to repair. Yeah, it's a laborsome process to figure this out, and I want to build that into a site so that people can connect their wallet and they can just do a quick demonstration to see the value of their shares versus if they were to unpair today and then repair. If we can build that in, I want to. And another thing I want to demonstrate in the same calculator is if somebody were to come in today and get the share rate that I have, what would it cost them? Why do I want this built into the site? To illustrate the value of the UFO shares. That's why.
Yeah, I think there's very few people that can actually explain how they work. So if we could create a couple tools, you know, to make it a little bit easier to understand.
Mm-hmm. Tools, man. We want tools.
All right. Yeah, sorry. I hopped on your YouTube and the speaker was on.
Yeah.
So I now have your YouTube up. It's delayed, but we'll work through it.
Okay. I'm logged into the site.
Okay. Scroll down to.
I'm on the dash.
Yeah, scroll down.
Okay.
Okay, pTGC market metrics, I think it was.
Give me a second.
Mine's a little delayed.
Yeah, I'll get back to it.
Yeah.
Market metrics. Let me see. Hold on. Is it below the fee allocation section?
No, it's pretty much above that.
Okay. Right here, correct? And do I click on view charts?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and there's another chart down here. It says show chart. I bet that's it.
No, it's not the show chart. I think it's the view chart.
Let's try it. That's the price history.
Okay, yeah, so this is where it's hidden.
Okay.
You see how price on the far right where it says price, it's actually a drop down?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. I don't remember seeing this Saturday, but this is good.
No, I didn't know this existed until just today.
It makes two of us, man.
Yeah. So now you can scroll down this list of like 10 different style charts to look at. And again, I haven't even gotten a chance to flick through all these yet, so I'm also kind of doing it right now as well. But
this is, dude.
Now that I got you on that right page, I can flick through it real quick and see if any of them give us the data that we're actually looking for. You know, what we've bought and burnt in the last couple weeks. Volume versus burns, total burns.
Huh.
USD. It's kind of hard because the price of pTGC is. Sorry, because the price is fluctuating constantly, and then obviously the value of the burn is constantly fluctuating. But I can see on what is this? It only goes back a week. It looks like. Like on 4/15, we were at 40,174,576 or 77,000. And I went to the total burned pTGC. I don't know if you're still on that like list of like 10 different charts.
Okay.
Did you see that?
Total burned?
Yeah. And it looks like it's It's like not even 6 days of history.
Yeah.
I wish we had a little bit more days of history.
Yeah, he might be building it up. He might make it so that we can zoom in or select different
time period.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome, because then we could zoom out and then like, oh, okay, look at in March we had this amount burned, and then we could do the math. You know what I mean? Even the calculator would be sweet. But like, for an example, in the last 6 days, we went from 404,840, which we're at right now, pretty much 841, from 400,175,000,000. So, you know, that's close to 700 million pTGC bought and burnt in the last 7 days.
Bro,
6 days.
That's not a small number when your initial supply was 333 billion.
Yeah. And I know it's not exact numbers, but
no. In 6 days, come on.
Yeah, so I'll type it in real quick. I have to go to PulseX real quick just to do the math for me. But we'll see what it is.
666 million.
600, okay. 666 million. That's $218,000 in the last 6 days.
You see, that's why I want to be able to see different time frames, because then if you can compare this 6 days to the previous 6 days, and then get some comparisons, then you can say, hey, we're burning an average of 500 million tokens, whatever, per week, but we're still burning. We burnt 666 million tokens in the last 6 days. And that's astounding, man. That's more than many people's position in pTGC. Burn, gone.
Like, for an example, today we've burned, I think, $32,000 of pTGC today. Like, I think a $32,000 position is obviously quite large in the pTGC ecosystem, right?
Yes.
So technically, we're burning. If someone came in today with $32,000, that's technically what's happening. Someone did come in with $32,000 today, but it's just the dead address, and they're never going to sell it forever onto the, pTGC could do 1,000x and they'll never sell it. And, that's obviously the best kind of person to come in is the longest term thinker ever, the dead address.
Yeah. And, the volume is very slow right now too. So a lot of the burning, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the burning is what the DAO is doing, because the DAO burned tokens today.
Yeah. So a lot of that burning is coming from the DAO, right? And that's what a lot of the burning that's been coming from the last, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks have been coming from, is the DAO has been buying and burning. And we were previously, how this whole conversation came up is that we were talking about, discounts on Pulse, discounts on pTGC and UFO, obviously, and like people who I think took advantage of the pTGC low are probably up, close to 80% now from those bottoms. But like, think back, what was a system that really took advantage of the lows? The pTGC DAO and the smart contracts. The smart contracts are buying every single day. The DAO is buying every single day. The holders of the assets are technically DCAing every single day by little amounts based on the volume of the token. Because you get drips and reflections at all different prices of pTGC every single day. But yeah, I was just kind of bringing up that, the market pulling back, PulseChain coming down these lows. If it came to these lows due to the market, the SEC, having the appeal. But what that equaled was a great opportunity for the pTGC DAO to buy cheap pTGC off the market and send it to the dead address. And it obviously wasn't small dollar amounts. Like we just said, in the last 6 days, $200,000 worth of pTGC. I think a week or so prior to that, it was definitely over 100,000. So, we could be close to $400,000 of pTGC bought and burnt by the Dow in the last few weeks. And that maybe sounds like a lot to some people now. Maybe it doesn't sound like a lot. But the cool thing about that is, as pTGC goes up in price, that's $400,000 now, but at a 2.2x, that's $1 million of pTGC off the market forever.
Yeah. It'd be cool to be able to break that out somehow as a metric. You know what I mean?
I think these charts are bringing in so much new information to our system, and we can see how much stronger the system's getting, and how much buying and burning is happening at these levels. Like, I don't know, but I don't think there's been weak periods where we've bought that much token or that much value of tokens off the market in 1 week. So, like, we're hitting new milestones all the time with this protocol, and we can actually see it growing and, becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, just really building out the foundation for the future. And what we believe is going to happen is we believe the machine will just keep getting stronger and stronger. That's what like anyone who's been here for a while, like, you, for an example, Banana, when you first came in, the machine wasn't running at these levels. Mm-hmm. When you got your position, you were saying, I'm seeing what the machine's doing, and I believe in the future this machine will be running better, which will make the price of these tokens obviously worth more. So this is a good place for me to store our value, or my value. Well, like, I'm still looking at it the same way. Like, today, we see the machine and we see what it's doing at these levels at the bottom of PulseChain. But what do I think this is going to be 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Like, if we're able to do this much value generation and this amount of buy and burns at these levels of PulseChain, like, if this blockchain is remotely successful and our system just keeps doing what the system's done, like, even if it just stays level, but let's say it just keeps amplifying and growing, PulseChain up 10x, we could be doing this kind of stuff on an every week basis, you know what I mean? Or possibly an everyday basis. Like, for example, today, $300,000. Like, can we imagine if that's $300,000 a day of buy and burns? Well, that's just a 10x from these levels. Pretty much just a 10x on PulseChain could let us do that very easily.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, what kind of comments do we have? Does anybody want to come up and mention anything? It's just quiet across the ranks. I have a question for you, Zen.
Yes.
Somebody was asking in the AMA yesterday about share rates and adding to your share rate. So let's say you have an existing LP, UFO, and Inc., for example, and you know what your share rate is. And it's kind of wise to be able to keep track of your share rate, which I think you can actually do, which you can do in the DApp, PulseTGC.com. So I think I know the answer to this, but I kind of want to run it by you. So the question is, if you already have a share rate and you want to dollar cost average in and add to it, does it kind of confuse matters if you're just adding into that LP, or should you start a fresh one?
If you can start a fresh one without losing percentages, it doesn't hurt, but it's pretty simple to just your portfolio, right? Like, let's use Hex for an example. Like, let's say
We lost you, Zen.
1 cent. And then, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry, I got a phone call. What I was saying is, imagine it almost like your portfolio, right? You bought Hex at 1 cent, and that's your Hex rate that you got. And now let's say Hex is at 10 cents, but you want to DCA, you want to get some more. Well, now you're getting Hex at 10 cents. Well, that's technically adjusting your average price, right? So, some of your Hex was purchased at 10 cents, some of your Hex was purchased at 1 cent, but you still own a quantity of Hex. The share rates would operate somewhat in the same way. When you entered some of the LPs, let's say at, $1,000 getting you 1 million shares, well, let's say in the future, $1,000 gets you 1,000 shares. These are just examples. Well, you're just going to end up with the average, right? Because just like in your own portfolio, you would have the average price that you spent on those certain amount of shares. Well, same there. You would end up with the average price that you spent on that amount of shares. It's just some you locked in early, some you locked in late. You'll have a quantity of PLP tokens. It's just some of those shares got a better rate and some of them don't, but you still have a quantity of PLP tokens and you have a quantity of shares.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. The only thing that you're missing in your records would be your entry cost.
Yeah. And then you can keep those records. And if you want to keep things separated for your own personal reasons, right? Or let's say you possibly want to close this down, because if you start mixing them, the whole closing it down and stuff like that, it now becomes a little bit more difficult, and the opportunities might not present themselves that much because you have some you locked in higher, some you locked in lower, but you can't necessarily pick which ones you shut down because they all get mashed together. Just like with your own portfolio, though, if you bought some Hex at 1 cent, some Hex at 10 cents, technically, if you wanted to take some profits at 8 cents, like you're technically not saying like, oh, I'm selling the 10-cent one that or no, I'm actually selling the 1 cent one because I don't want to sell the 10-cent ones because I'm behind on it. It's like, well, it doesn't really matter. You're just selling. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter that you bought some here and some there, but you're just selling them.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah,
they get kind of mixed together there. And that's kind of why I say is like, if you can keep them separate for your own personal tracking and share rates for what you spent on it and share rates per PLP tokens. Because when you do start mixing them, it does take away some of that ability, right?
Yeah.
But you can stack them.
Okay. I found the chart that we were talking about on Saturday. And the way you get to it, I don't know if you're still looking at your computer or at the screen, but you go into the fee allocation section and you select show chart. And then it gives you a few options. You've got volume, fees, V1, V2 splits, and then 7, 30, 90, and 180 days. So if you select fees, then you can see just for the last 6 days, the like we were just talking about, you can see the fee allocation for the last 6 days. Which is really cool. It seems like we're able to see more days, though. Do you remember? Well, I'll just look at the video for Saturday.
Well, no, I can tell you. I'm not looking at the YouTube anymore, but there should be a bar along the top of fee allocations where you can hit volume, fee, 7-day, 30-day, 90-day, 180-day. Yes. So you just go to 180-day if you want the max time frame.
Yeah. It's going to take a little getting used to this new stuff. We just finally got looking at pTGC figured out, and then Kong goes and adds a bunch of stuff to it. But I love it, man. I love all these metrics. It's like one of my friends told me, and he's a wise man. He's like, just give me information. I just want information. Let me be a filter for all the information. And that's what looking at pTGC is. It gives you all the information. So you can just spit up, just eliminate whatever you don't want, but you can keep the good stuff, but you have a lot. I wouldn't say we have all of it, but we got a bucket ton. So yeah, we got lots of information on on the Grace currencies, and I love it.
Yeah, one of my favorite things he added was how it shows the average daily volume in 1 day period. Obviously, that's today. And then it shows you also 7 days. So what the average daily volume is in 7 days, in 30 days, in 180 days, 90 days. I think that information is super valuable because you're like, okay, well, I can actually look at the average price, and I can look, because you literally on charts, you can put in what the average price is in 90 days, 180 days. Like, you can literally use moving average in that way. Mm-hmm. So you could look at what the average price of PulseChain is, or even pTGC is. And then you can look at the same time period, and you can actually see, okay, this is the average volume when this is the average price.
Yeah.
And you can actually make predictions as far as, okay, well, if pTGC stays at this price, this is based on data, this is the average volume. If pTGC price goes here, if it multiplies times 2, I can predict that the volume is going to increase by 2. And then you can actually start saying, okay, well, then I can predict my APY, my yield. I can also predict, the buy and burns, how much the Dow is occurring, and everything like that. So I think that's super valuable data too.
Well, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna overlay the price over the volume.
Yeah, you could overlay the price over the volume as well.
Uh-huh.
I think you have to pay more attention to, though, the average, right? So you're taking in a lot of data, and then you're collecting the mean between all that data. So, for an example, the 180-day data, I actually made a post about it. Hold on. I'm going to get it up if I can. It's from a few days ago.
On your Twitter?
Yeah, it was my personal Twitter. It was from 5 days ago.
Okay, I'm looking for it. Like the April 16th?
It's not telling me the day, but yeah, I assume it's April 16th. It starts out as pTGC is outperforming expectations based on the PLS moving average shown in the picture below. Yeah,
I got it. Let me pull it up on the screen. We can share it for the audience on YouTube. You want to read it? Give me a second. I gotta scroll down to find it now again.
Yeah, you can read it if you want. I think that's probably better.
Okay. I gotta find it again. Okay, it says pTGC is outperforming expectations. Based on the Pulse moving average shown in the picture below, pTGC's daily trading volume has been approximately 5% higher in the past 7 days compared to the last half year, despite Pulse being priced 50% lower in the same time frame. This suggests pTGC is performing stronger than its current chain lows indicate. It will be interesting to see how this metric evolves when PulseChain returns to its SAC, standard average cost, or even achieves a 10x increase from SAC. Note that Pulse has not reached SAC in over a year. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so what I was mainly touching on is, so I put the moving average on 180 days, and what I found was PulseChain was actually 50% lower than its 180-day moving average, right? And a lot of our volume comes from our liquidity. So that means our liquidity, if PulseChain is 50% lower than its moving average, that means our liquidity is also 50% lower, because when PulseChain goes down 50%, our liquidity goes down 50%, right? Which means market makers need to move less value to fix prices. And also when people are trading, they're technically trading 50% less value as well, because everything's diluted by the chain. So that's why when I say that as PulseChain goes up and it increases our liquidity and increases the value of the tokens everyone holds, buyers, sellers, etc., volume should naturally increase by that same multiple, I believe. Obviously, this is yet to be completely seen, but even the data that we've tracked in the past, Banana, we've seen when PulseChain went up 2x, we actually saw our volume click up more than 2x. I don't know if you remember that data that you found.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So it was like PulseChain went up 2x and our volume went up like 5x, which I think that was a little bit amplified from a lot of human interaction. But I do think it's going to be a pretty even, off of the data that I've been finding, it's going to be somewhat even. So what I'm getting at is, if the blockchain is 50% down from the moving average, mechanically, our volume in the last 7 days should be 50% lower than the 180-day daily volume average, right? It's the same data. But what we're actually finding is our 7-day average is actually staying pretty close. It was actually, on this day I did this post, it was 5% higher than the 180-day moving average, even though our whole entire system is being suppressed 50%, which shows our machine is actually operating at 100% higher level, even with everything being sucked down. Super interesting data.
Yeah.
We'll see, right? We'll see if, as things go back up, as let's say PulseChain recrosses the 180-day moving average, we will see if our 7-day daily volume average is more, right? So what I'm predicting now is, when we go closer to that 180-day moving average again, I believe our 7-day will be higher than the 180-day, which, if it's higher, that means we're generating more value, right? And that's what we care about. We want pTGC to be generating more value as time goes on, because that shows our machine is getting bigger and stronger, and it can actually keep increasing the buy-in burns, LP ads, and APY over time, making it just more sustainable and more sustainable and more sustainable. And if it keeps growing evenly, the numbers that I've predicted outwards with a successful blockchain start to confirm. And if those numbers start to confirm, I start to kind of pause and think, like, this stuff is going to get crazy. It's the numbers that you get when you multiply out evenly, they like sound crazy. So if the math keeps mathing, I start to tell myself, well, you're not crazy. This is like, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's just
math.
Time. It's just math, and it's time, right? Like, how long does it take PulseChain to get to these numbers, or will it even get to these numbers? I don't know, right? But like, if PulseChain gets these numbers, following the math and the data, this is where pTGC is ending up at. This is where volume's ending up at. This is where liquidity is ending up at. And when you look at all those metrics and you know what the machine does at those levels, because that you can't change. If your volume's this, we know what it's buying, burning, LPing, and APY to holders every single day. So if mechanically we can get the volume to that level daily, it becomes a very, very well-running machine. Technically, like, if the machine is buying and burning $200,000 a day, when you multiply that out a year, that's a ton of buy pressure coming on the bid side. To just even stay level, you could absorb so much sell pressure. But eventually the sell pressure runs out. And then what happens? Well, the buy and burn doesn't run out if the volume stays relevant. That forces the price upwards. And then you're just left with a system with pretty much no sellers left.
I'm very optimistic and excited for what could happen in the greatest currencies when we have a successful PulseChain.
Yeah, I do think this dip, though, has been very, very beneficial for our system. It's like we've seen in the last few weeks, buying and burning $300,000 of value of pTGC. Either that equaled positive price appreciation, or it ultimately bought tokens out from people that were willing to sell at the bottoms. And then once they're bought out, they can never sell a token twice. And then it landed in hands of a system that can never sell the tokens again, the debt address. And that just makes the supply distribution pretty much in the strongest hands that exist, the debt address.
Uh-huh. I was explaining to the lady that I was onboarding today the difference between fiat currency and cryptocurrencies, you know, in particular the Grays currencies, and how fiat currency, the dollar, is inflationary and the Grays currencies are deflationary. And she was very impressed. I mean, she's brand new to crypto, doesn't know a thing about crypto until like when we had a conversation yesterday. And it was blowing her mind that there's actually currencies that aren't inflating. And then she says, does that mean that they're like, that increases the value? I'm like, yes, you got it. Sure does.
Yeah, and you know, even like looking at currencies, and currencies obviously have value and you transact with them. But even when you just look at like assets as well, like most assets that exist, we kind of touched base on this last time, even though like you don't like to really bring this up, but they're pretty much all inflationary to an extent, right? Like they're always mining more gold. Gold is obviously one of the best assets out there. Even Bitcoin, it has a form of inflation, even though it's set, and some people don't even call it inflation. It's just, you know, supply is coming out over time. But pTGC operates in such a different fashion as far as to where like the supply is ever decreasing over time. And basic supply and demand principles just forces the price upwards in that event as long as the demand stays somewhat relevant.
Yeah.
As far as like inflationary currencies go, like if inflation isn't the worst thing as long as demand keeps increasing.
Yes.
And with human population constantly increasing, with minimal, it's actually not that bad a thing because you actually don't want the fiat currency's value to appreciate, right? And if you have more users needing that currency, by inflating the price, it actually keeps the value relevant. And that's in a certain situation, inflation isn't bad, but where pTGC kind of operates in a different form of currency is it's not really a transactional currency, and you more use it as a store of value. And if it's a store of value, you want the appreciation of that asset, right? Because you're not using it to transact with goods where you don't want the price of goods to necessarily change because the price of the dollar went up, except they're now doing it in the opposite direction. They're forcing the price of the dollar down because they're printing it faster than human population is increasing and demand is increasing, to where they're kind of affecting themselves in the opposite direction. But I think blockchain gives us a very, very unique way to redefine assets, right? Like a thing that gave it asset value is is obviously the supply and demand principles, but you have to actually give that asset value. And with how market makers work, it actually gives us the ability to give anything we want value as long as you're willing to put your money where your mouth is, right? Like you could literally make a JPEG meme coin, and if you're willing to put $10 million behind it, well, now those JPEG meme coins have that $10 million in value. But the cool thing about blockchain is we can actually manipulate the numbers with code to make it to where the math is constantly on our side, which obviously helps with price appreciation. And assets until blockchain, you couldn't really do that, right? Like gold, you're just mining it, right? It's inflationary, it's scarce. Obviously, it takes work to get the gold, which gives it a value, and it's backed by a lot of money, which that value backs it forever. But, 1 second, guys. Can you keep going?
Sure. No problem. Just answering Shaq's question in the chat. He's asking for a price prediction. We're not going to give a price prediction, but we will give like calculator predictions. So like there is a site you guys can use. It's called pampy.app. And what you can do is estimate the PulseChain reserves. You can calculate and factor in the PulseChain reserves into the core tokens, Richard Hart's core tokens. And you can even now with PAMPI, they just recently implemented it. You can implement a cell pressure. So I put in 50% cell pressure for Hex, Pulse, PulseX, and Inc. for each of those, 50% cell pressure, and then calculate this $271 million going into each of these assets. And that would be like a 318x for Pulse, 1,000x for Hex. You know, if you put that monetary value into those assets, that's what they would do. And it's speculation that $271 million would come into those assets, but it could happen. So then you can take this 318x over to pTGC's Moon Math calculator and say, okay, if pTGC moved against Pulse at a factor of 5, and it has a good track record of doing more than that, if it moved at an X factor of 5, and then Pulse increased by 318x, well, that would be 318 times 5, which is, let's see what that is, 318x. I got to make sure I include the X there. That would be a 1,590x, which is basically 50 cents. Okay. So that's, that is, I hesitate to say it's within the realm of possibility, but it is crypto. So, I mean, it's just a Moon Math calculator, and we can tone it down a bit too. You can go, okay, let's say pTGC only does a 2x against Pulse's 318x. If Pulse does a 318x, well, that's a 636x or a 20-cent pTGC. Hope that helps you, Shaq. Oh, 15 cents is already enough. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for most people here, 10 cents is just, you know, what is 10 cents from where we are? 0.1 divided by point. That's a 300x. 333 x's from here is 10 cents. And yeah, most people would be overjoyed with that number of x's. Well, you know, we're pTGC. I keep getting this light in my face. Sorry, guys. It's coming in through the blinds. pTGC is a leverage on the Pulse network. So, you know, it's possible to see those kinds of X's, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we got to be patient. Who wants to come up and say something, guys? Zen, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, someone was knocking on the door.
Okay.
I have been watching the volume, and I'm pretty heavy into pTGC. I have a lot of, UFO. I have a lot of UFO shares, and the volume is very low. What are the catalysts to get UFO volume jumping again? What do you think that would be?
That's a great question.
Yeah, so it needs to pass the threshold. So, like, the threshold is usually when one asset that's in the pTGC or the UFO farms to go on a move greater than usually 10%, right? So if right now all of the RH tickers have been kind of just lockstepping together at the hip, and what fires off UFO is when one of those tokens tends to either move downwards or upwards more than the rest, right? And what we've seen in the past, it usually happens in the upwards direction more than the downwards direction. Usually downwards, they kind of are very lock-hipped because of Hart's law. But in the upwards direction, in the past, what's really fired UFO off is something will come out, if it's an RH tweet or the PulseChain community just creating a narrative more strongly about one of the RH tickers more than the other. We've pretty much seen it between every single RH ticker at different points. At one point, people were saying, oh, Ink's going to be the best mover, right? So value flowed from other RH tickers into Ink, which then fired UFO off. Or people said, oh, Hex is RH's baby, then money moved to Hex and from the RH other tickers, which then that made UFO fire off, and PulseX, hyper deflationary, and then money flowed from the other ones into that. So what it really takes is just for one of the RH tickers to kind of move down or the other one move up. And then since that's where the majority of the liquidity is held, the market makers need to move a lot of money to fix those prices. There is some other pairings with UFO that fire off like kind of every day, but the quantity of liquidity, especially at these low levels of PulseChain, are somewhat low. So the amount of volume that you get from those lower ones aren't like the littler ones is not that much. What really fires it off is when you're getting more drastic movements with the actual RH, the larger tickers on chain.
That's what I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about when does it become juicy for the arbitrage bots to play? Because right now, we're like $48,000 for the past 24 hours, which is a tiny amount. And it just tells me that there's not enough action going around. They're not buying and selling, like you said, and need one or two things for the art bots to see opportunity and start playing. Everything's kind of dead or moving in lockstep, like you said.
Yeah, it's pretty much, for one, there isn't much human interaction going on with UFO at the moment. I think pTGC has a little bit more. So the human interaction is obviously the easiest one. That's a simple buy or sell on the chart, which automatically triggers a little bit of volume. But let's say, for an example, you take away all human interaction and you're just dependent on the mechanical driven volume, which is pretty much UFO today, right? Like I look at this stuff a lot and I could pretty confidently say there's very minimal interaction with UFO today. And that's very minimal buys and very minimal sells, right? So it's kind of like stalemated, which usually means somewhat of a bottom when it kind of goes flat for a little bit, and then usually it picks a direction and then it'll start going up again or going down. But where I'm getting at is, so that volume that's there today is all mechanically driven by the web itself. But the majority of that mechanically driven volume is from the smaller parts of the web that don't have as much share over it, because I know the larger ones all moved lockstep in the last 24 hours, just knowing Pulse, PulseX, Inc., Hex for the most part. Those are the main pieces. They went up, but they all went up in lockstep. So the going up is nice because now it's revaluing the liquidity web. So in a perfect world, right, like we want it to revalue in steps. Like we would like Hex to move, and then PulseX to move, and then Pulse to move, and then Inc. to move. But it doesn't necessarily always happen that way. Sometimes, like today, it'll just move up all together, like everything at once, which doesn't necessarily fire the market-making bots. But what it is doing is it's revaluing the liquidity web. So in the future, when the market maker bots do get fired off, they now need to move more value, right? Extreme example would be if all the RH tickers 2x in one day. Well, technically, if they moved up all evenly, that wouldn't even fire even a massive move like a 2x, but technically that wouldn't even fire off market maker bots if they all moved up evenly at the same time, because the ratio in every liquidity pool moved up at the same exact time and evenly. But once it's revalued, there would be twice as much liquidity. So in the future, when the market making event does occur, the market makers now need to move twice as much value to fix the ratio, which then equals twice as much volume, right? So what I see solving, the problem, obviously human interaction is awesome. But if we're looking at just the mechanical side, we need the assets within the liquidity web to fire at separate times. And then the easy, obviously, huge benefit not only to the price of UFO, but to the volume is repricing of the assets that we're connected to. So like PulseChain, PulseX, Inc., because when those reprice, it reprices the liquidity web. UFO going up in price wouldn't hurt either, right? You can reprice liquidity also by UFO appreciating in price as well.
Cool. I was talking to a customer today, and I just out of the random, I said, "Are you into crypto?" He's like, "Yeah, kinda, but just don't tell me about XRP. Every person I know tells me to get an XRP. Every fireman, every gas station worker tells me to get an XRP." And I said, "Well, I'm not in that." And I started explaining pTGC, and he goes, "Oh, I've never heard of something like that. How do you do that?" And it was kind of fun to have a conversation. But I said, "How much time do you have? Because I can spend 2 hours or 5 minutes." He said, "Give me the 5 minutes." I said, "Okay, I'll give you the 5 minutes, but you're not going to know everything. We're going to talk next week after you get your treasure set up." But yeah, this stuff isn't easy for newbies, because he says, "Oh, I have a Coinbase account. Is it there?" I'm like, "No, it will never be there because they can't make money off of it." "What do you mean?" "Well, they make money off of the float. They buy and sell. They're the house. That's why they want you to stay there and play there." And he didn't understand that at first until I started explaining it. And then he's like, "Oh, I get it." I hope he did. I don't know. But yeah, just the fact that all these people in this group right here are listening, it's teaching them, or they already know. I think what I'm trying to say is that we're such a small group of kind of crypto nerds, and teaching people how to play here is just takes a little bit of work, a little bit of knowledge, and it takes some effort. And you're not going to do it right the first time you teach someone. It's going to take some while before you really get it down and explain it well. I don't know why I told you that, but that's just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Sometimes I'm like educating someone on pTGC, and sometimes I'll do a 30-minute rant and I feel really good about it. And then other times I'll be like, "God, that time just didn't come out as smooth," and it kind of probably stirred them up a little bit.
But they're mostly confused.
Yeah, you can get them really easy. But sometimes like I'll get it out to someone who doesn't understand it really well, and I can see it clicking. And then sometimes I'll feel like I'm chasing my own tail a little bit, right? Like trying to get the image out there, and it just doesn't come out, because it's difficult when you're using obvious words that are like foreign languages to people. So you got to pick and choose what information you want to feed them, because if you give them too much in one bite, they're just going to choke.
Yeah. And he said something interesting. He said, "My normal gut reaction is if I don't understand it, it's a scam, and so I don't want to play." I said, "Okay, well, that's a fair reaction, but you're going to lose opportunities if you don't delve in deeper. There are plenty of scams out there, and don't just assume that lack of knowledge equals scam." But I do get that. I do get that filter in people's minds.
Yeah, one of the best examples I kind of always lean on, and it doesn't operate exactly like this, but it kind of illustrates the picture, is in the last 20 years, right? Some of the biggest companies that have came up from nothing, like companies that didn't exist that now are some of the biggest players in the game, are credit card processing companies and exchanges. And they're both kind of operating off of the same idea, right? The idea is a fee on transaction. Coinbase, obviously, to interact with crypto, you need to pay the fee that they're giving you the liquidity to that crypto and doing the transaction for you, and you're doing it on their platform, and they generate revenue every time that transaction happens, and that fee obviously goes to make the system bigger and stronger and supports the system. Credit card processing companies kind of operate in the same process, right? They give you the box, put it in your store, and then when users want to use their card, they swipe their card and there's a small fee tacked onto that. Also same idea. And if you know anyone who got into credit card processing 15, 20 years ago when they first started, it's been one of the most lucrative businesses that have existed in the last 20 years, right? We're kind of operating off of the same system as that, right? We are putting up liquidity, we're putting up the service, we're putting the machine in the store, and people are wanting product, right? There's market makers that want the product because we hold the liquidity with it, and as things shift up and down, they're like, "Ooh, I can obviously make money on this," or "I want that good," is the more common word for it in real life. A user wants that good. And to interact and get that good, they have to pay the fee. But they don't really care to pay the fee if they want the good or they want to make that arbitrage opportunity. And then that's what makes our system grow and thrive. And when people can relate the fee on transaction to pretty much two of the biggest companies that have grown in the last 20 years, it really shows you how lucrative that space is. And with that value going back to the token instead of to the company itself, like these other things, if you take all that revenue and start to really add it up over time, that kind of shows you how massive it could actually be.
Zen Polygon asked a question. He says, do you foresee a staking mechanism being built for UFO, or is UFO built intentionally not to have that capability? Incentive to hodl UFO through the bear market is my thought, kind of like pTGC.
Yeah, so where pTGC's design was the single-sided staking idea, right? Where UFO's design was more the staking is the farming, right? So if you want to, in a way, stake, you're more interacting with the farm. Obviously, a lot of LP people don't like to LP, and that's why in UFO, we designed it to where you can just hold UFO and you earn APY. So in the idea of, having a reason to hold through the bear market, the reason would be the APY for just holding. And I don't know if he knows that you can just hold UFO and earn APY.
Yeah, I think you know that, Polygon. I think he knows that you can just hold UFO. And actually the APY for UFO is greater than the APY for LPing it. Because the people that are LPing it, those tokens are not receiving the APY for holding. So only the tokens that are liquid in people's wallets are receiving that the reflections.
Yeah, that's good information to point out. With pTGC, when you're a staker, you're earning staking rewards and holding rewards. It's not one or the other. You're actually double dipping in both. Where with UFO, you're making the decision to earn farming rewards or just the rewards for holding, right? The APY built into just holding, or you can go the step further and earn the farming rewards, which are in PLS. But you don't earn both unless you're holding both. Obviously, you're not earning twice on the same token, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Kind of like you do in pTGC. But you can earn like 3 times in the same token in pTGC because you can lock your pTGC also and get those early unlock rewards.
Yeah.
I have a topic that I wanted to bring up. I was thinking about holding in the bear market. So let's say that pTGC, and everything else has a crazy big run up. Everyone goes, "Woohoo! I'm rich." And then if the cycles play out, whenever that is, it cycles back down. What's the case for holding in the bear market? Where let's talk about that theoretically. Let's say you have a whole bunch and it goes up to 2 million. Do you cash out? Do you take a little bit for whatever you need and then leave the rest behind? And it drops. Do you kick yourself? Do you say, "Hey, I'm holding for the next idea"? But I want to really get that conversation going. I haven't really thought about it much.
That's a great question, man. That's a great question. Do you want me to go first on that one, Zen?
Definitely, you shoot. If anyone else has any other not conversation, but anything else to add on this question too, that's up here speaking or listening, feel free to raise your hand to come up because I do think this is a good topic.
Okay, so I will tell you. I'll tell everybody where I stand today with the information that I have. about this ecosystem and PulseChain just today. And I've had this thought for quite some time when it comes to this asset. And I might be wrong. And you guys can have other opinions, and I might be proven wrong at the top of the cycle. Nobody knows. But today, this is my thought. I am planning to only take home for profit my yield, my staking rewards, my holding rewards, locking rewards, LP rewards for UFO. I am really hesitant because I understand the value of these assets. I am extremely hesitant to sell principal in the hopes of getting a good deal at the bottom of the bear market. Right now, that's where I am. I'm intending things I could change in 6 months, but right now I'm intending to hodl through the bear market.
I got a question though.
Go for it.
I got a question, Blackhorn. Do you think that after the round tripping of this cycle, that PulseChain will be higher than it is now or lower than it is now?
I think it'll be higher. We'll create a new floor. Yeah, it'll still be higher. It won't be. If I'm looking at Hex, Hex at 50, 55 cents, and then we're down to sub pennies. If we have that type of cycle, it's still higher than it was when it first launched. So I guess that's my only basis I could think of.
That's true, and that's Hex. It's not a layer 1 blockchain.
Sure,
it's a little bit of a different thing too, right?
Yeah.
You have a gas coin. So if this represents basically like the blown out bottom of the like after all the fun you could ever have on the planet on PulseChain at the bottom, if it's going to go up and then it's going to come back down with the market, in general, you land much higher than where you started from on a cycle 1 blockchain. So I had to keep that in mind when we ask this question, right? Because all the way up and all the way back down, you have massive amounts of the coins being burned out of circulation. You have a ton of coins going into long-term holders' hands. You have a ton of coins that are being locked out up to 10 years, right? You don't have liquidity being pulled in this ecosystem like everybody else will probably pull at the top because there's no games being played with liquidity. So you have to ask yourself, if you round trip it, where do you think it actually lands from here? Because the assets that it's tied to will probably end up higher than they are now. And that's before you take into consideration the math on how the system works. And then you also have to take into consideration all the way up and all the way down, especially on the way down, people who don't sell, they're getting way more of the yield because the people who do sell relinquish it to the people who don't. So I think when we're thinking about that, you got to factor those realities in.
Yep, that was my thought process. I'm just going to hold. I haven't sold a single one. Every time I get rewards, I just restake them and relock them once the shares pick up again, if it makes sense to lock them. I'm just going to hold and hold and hold. But because I've been thinking about myself, like if we have that huge run up, imagine the yield you're going to get off of that. And then if you're going to have the same dollar amount on the way down, there's a whole pile of more yield coming in. Now, sure, it's worth less than it was at the top, but you're right. If you're not looking at the dollar value, you're just looking at how many coins do I control that's the critical factor, is just controlling more coins. The longer you stay, the more coins you get to control.
Yeah, I'll add to this a little bit. I'm obviously probably not the best person to ask because I'm very biased in pTGC and UFO's favor, but I will bring this up, right? In the last year, PulseChain is currently down 83% from its high. And we haven't seen a legitimate run on PulseChain really. A year ago was pretty much the nice run. But currently PulseChain in the last year is 83% down. After we have a good run on PulseChain, I don't know what the bottom is going to be. Is it 83% down? Is it 90% down? Is it 95% down? But I like to think that for sustainability, because it's an actual layer 1 blockchain, maybe an 85 to 90% dip is in the cards, but that's what we're already in. We're literally at the bottom of a 90% dip right now in the last year. This is pretty much in the last year. So you can kind of simulate what a bear market is right now, because a bear market, a 4-year cycle is usually 1 year of solid down and then some sideways action, and then a year of somewhat up, and then a year of good up, right? So we've pretty much experienced, if you look at the PulseChain chart, a bear market in the last year. We've went down 85%. But when you go to the pTGC chart, because the blockchain we're built on is in a bear market in a microcycle or whatever you want to call it. But when you zoom back 1 year, which is, and this might be a very drastic example, but it actually shows you what the system can do in a bear market technically, because it is such a small cup. I'm going to hold on. So I'm going to get let's go. We'll even take our high, right? So from the high in March, which is kind of where we pulled down from, 83% down, we are still currently up 3.5x. So in the last year and a few months, the blockchain is currently down 85%. pTGC is currently up 3.5x. So the system is actually mechanically able to still go up against an 85% dip on the blockchain due to it being such a small cup. Is that what's going to happen in this next bear market? I have no idea, right? We will be bigger at that time. If the blockchain actually goes on a huge rip, it could go down 98% for all I know. So you do need to weigh all those options out, right? I do think it is important to maybe take a little bit of profits at the top. But what I'm saying is we've pretty much been in a bear market on PulseChain for the last year and some months. We're down 85%. pTGC is currently up 3x. If that's a bear market for pTGC, you're probably better just holding pTGC, unless you're good at trading.
Nope, I know that traders lose.
Good traders can win. Most people aren't good traders. That's just honest truth. Some people like to think they're good at trading. Most people aren't good traders. I do think there is a difference between trading and smart profit taking at times, right? It's sometimes good to get your initial back and then you're on house money. Or if you are happy about where your position is and you got some bills that you want to knock off so you're not paying interest on that stuff anymore, maybe knock a few of your bills off. You know what I mean? You can still love your bags and take care of your life in real life, right? It's not actual life-changing money until you actually change your life. So, and I know that's pretty contradicting for me to say, because I do believe storing value on chain and real value generating assets is the end all be all, right? That's the ultimate goal, is to work to get your value into assets that are appreciating in price and also earning you additional yield on top of that, right? You're having your money work for you and your money's now growing. Like, this is where you want majority of your value to be. But you also want to make sure that you're living comfortably in real life as well, right? You're hoping to get both of them. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that currently for the last year and 2 months, PulseChain is down 85%. pTGC is up 3x. That's somewhat of a simulation to a bear market. Obviously, we were a very small cup in those earlier days, makes it easier to push. But in the grand scheme of things, of where we are currently on PulseChain and how many people know about PulseChain, we're still a very small cup.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that helped a little bit, Blackthorn.
No, it did. It did. I already have my game plan in place, but I just wanted to have the conversation for other people.
Yeah. No, if anyone else has anything to add or their strategies or whatnot, feel free to. But yeah, I do find it very interesting to study PulseChain in the last year. And if you study ETH, right, or Bitcoin, the major part of the bear market usually varies from a year to a year and a half. And we've pretty much experienced that on PulseChain the last year and a few months.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC gave us a bear market in the middle of a bull market.
Yeah, and then you can see actually in real time how pTGC actually weathered that. In comparisonly, if you look at it, like, it's up 3x, like, that's not bad considering what the blockchain did in that time period.
Yeah, like a forever down escalator.
Yeah, it down 85%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even including yield, right? Yield during that time. The fact that there's way less asset on the market at that time now. So.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Zen, are you going to be having a voice chat tomorrow?
I will, as long as I'm not at the hospital.
Okay.
So it might get canceled, but as of right now, it seems like I'm going to still be doing it. Yeah, so for anyone listening, if you have any questions, conversations, you just don't like to come up on these public spaces, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do private VCs in our Telegram. They're non-recorded, so you don't have to feel like you're getting recorded and blasted on YouTube or Twitter or anything like that. Tuesdays are at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and Thursdays are at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I pretty much just go through some of the stats from Look Into pTGC and then open up the floor to questions and comments. If there is questions and comments, we'll have a fun conversation for an hour or so. If there is none, we usually just shut it down. But if you have any conversation or questions that you just want answered, I literally hold that space specifically for the community to come get their questions answered. If it's specifically about the protocols, or if they're trying to onboard people and they need help with a couple of the areas people have questions on. It's for a lot of those reasons.
Justin Knapp asks, can you explain how the liquidity is burnt?
How liquidity burning works is when you provide liquidity, you receive a PLP token. And what a PLP token is pretty much an IOU of the two assets that you put into liquidity. So for an example, if I put in PulseChain and pTGC, and I bonded those in liquidity on, let's say, PulseXV2. PulseXV2 would give me PLP tokens. And those PLP tokens are a claim check on a portion of the liquidity pool. So let's say I got 100 PLP tokens, and let's say in that liquidity pool, there's 200 tokens, PLP tokens that exist. Well, that would mean I own 50% of the liquidity because I have 50% of the PLP tokens. So my claim check, I could actually go and return those PLP tokens via PulseX and get back my pTGC and PLS. But what burnt liquidity is when you get those PLP tokens, you send them to the dead address. So you're literally sending that PLP token to the dead address, so you could never go and reclaim your pTGC and PLS. So now that portion of the liquidity is burnt. In that example, I just showed I owned 50%. So the question is like, okay, well, there's another 50% still out there. That other 50% could already be at the burn address, or that other 50% could be owned by community members or whatnot, right? So in that example, 50% of the LP would be burnt, and then 50% of it could be community owned, or or the other 50% was already sent to the dead address. I go and make the other PLP or LP, I get 100 PLP tokens. Now I send that to the dead address. Now 100% of the liquidity of that pair is burned. And what that ultimately means is no one can remove that liquidity from the community. Because if it's not burnt, someone could wake up one day and say, you know what, I want my PLS back, or I want my pTGC back to sell it. So they could actually go and reclaim their PLP, or send in their PLP token and reclaim their pTGC and PLS. And that ultimately would mean now that liquidity isn't there for the community to access. So it's a way of locking the liquidity forever when you burn it, making it to where that liquidity is ultimately given up to the protocol forever.
Which increases the value of the protocol, because burnt liquidity is like the ultimate liquidity. It's like you can't, I don't know, maybe there's a way, but it's like the best form of liquidity.
Well, the only way you can access that value then is by owning the token. So you could only get that PLS out of that liquidity by actually being an owner of pTGC. And then you could sell your pTGC and access that PLS. But if you don't own any pTGC, there's no accessing that PLS. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, Hayden, you see most people, most protocols, even if they have a nice size LP, it's not burned, because to have that much burned liquidity means that you actually had to give away millions of dollars to the community, to the actual protocol. That's why you don't see a lot of burning of LP with a lot of these things.
Yeah, you're not only giving up the speculative asset side, you're also giving up the gas token of the blockchain side, or whatever other side of the asset that you're burning with it. A lot of times you don't see an asset, like you'll see with the protocol, like they'll have liquidity at the bottom, and let's say the protocol or the blockchain does a bunch of exits, right? And then you recheck the liquidity and you're like, it's weird, this protocol's up 10x, the blockchain's up a little bit,
but the liquidity isn't up as much as I wanted. Well, it's because probably a lot of that liquidity was actually provided by community members or the protocol, but they weren't actually giving it to the protocol forever. They were just lending it to it for a time period. But when they want their value back, because it's their money, they can take it at any point. The thing that I really like about, burnt liquidity or protocol-owned liquidity is that it's actually there for the protocol in the burnt sense forever, right? It's not a community member providing it for their own financial interest. Usually when a community member does it, they're doing it for their own financial benefit. If that's for an APY, or if that's to DCA out or DCA into a protocol, whatever it might not be, but it's usually for a financial reason. When a protocol is doing it, it's doing it to give the value to the protocol. So there's value backing the protocol.
Yeah, and another thing too you might want to talk about is when you have a run, when you have a really nice uptrend, and let's say you do 50x, 100x, whatever it is. Let's say, for example, pTGC does 100x from here. PulseChain does absolutely amazing, and everything goes really, really well. Well, the liquidity for pTGC's ecosystem is just going to be astronomical, right? You're talking about numbers that you rarely see in crypto. It would put pTG's ecosystem at the top of the food chain. And what that means for token holders is that you're talking about having hundreds of millions of dollars of liquidity for people who held their tokens. What does that mean practically? It means that you can take profits without messing around with the chart. Because somebody wants to take $1 million in profits when there's $300 million in liquidity, it doesn't matter anymore, right? But when you have removable liquidity, as the price goes up, shoots up, if that liquidity is owned, a lot of the times that liquidity gets pulled as it's going up, right? So by the time you get up to some really high numbers, your market cap is high, the valuation of the token is high, but because the LPs were being pulled all the way up, now you're left with a real thinned out liquidity pool with everybody in a lot of profits. And that's not a good thing.
That's otherwise known as a bad deal. And that's not what we have going on over here at the Grays Currencies. We got a good deal going on over here, where every token that we've earned in yield is backed by liquidity, and most of that liquidity is burnt, with pTGC specifically, at least.
It's, for me, it's the number one reason why I take this ecosystem so seriously. It's because the amount of liquidity. And for example, when, like, over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I don't know what the numbers are, Zen, but the system has been buying and burning 30 grand a day, 35 grand a day, or whatever it is in pTGC, right? So you're taking real pulse, which is the core value of the blockchain, pushing it into the pool to pull out 100+ million pTGC, and then you're sending that pTGC to a burn address. So that could never come back into the pool to push the pool down. But at the same time, all of that pulse, I think it's been 1 billion a day injected. All of that pulse was pushed into that pool. The pTGC was taken out and burned. But the pool of pulse is still there. So even when you do buy and burns, you have 1 billion pulse a day currently being injected to make our tokens more scarce. People who are holding the tokens, their yield, their portion of the yield is going up, and the pulse is literally being given to the community, right? So when PulseChain goes up in price, that liquidity goes up in price. You don't have a real cryptocurrency without liquidity. You just don't. You can have a really high market cap, and you can have a lot of people and a lot of profits, but when people want to take profits, it really wrecks the chart.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up, Mando. That the good example is the buy and burn. It makes it simple. Since the majority of pTGC liquidity is either burnt or protocol owned, when value is getting injected into the LP pools, they're not getting injected into a holder's liquidity position. Because if it was getting injected into a holder's liquidity position, technically at some point that liquidity could be removed. So for an example, if 50% of the liquidity was owned by the protocol and 50% of the liquidity was owned by community members, right? And we were to be doing buy and burn, buy and burn, buy and burn. Well, half of that PLS, you said 1 billion PLS a day for the last few days, right? Half of that PLS is going into the burnt liquidity pool, which is the protocols, only for the holders to access by selling pTGC. But the other half of that is actually going into the liquidity provider's hands. It's not actually the protocols or the holders of the protocol's value. The liquidity provider could actually take that at any point, could wake up one day and say, I want my money back. And as the token goes up, you're technically giving that user more of that PLS. Obviously, they're giving up their portion of the asset. That's how liquidity pools work. But I do find that's why I really like protocol-owned liquidity. That's why I like V2 liquidity. I think it really backs a protocol by a lot of value. And it's value that, not all of the pTGC liquidity is protocol owned or burnt, but a very, very, very large percentage of it is. That makes it to where every time a buy and burn is happening, or as someone's buying pTGC, that PLS that's getting entered into the liquidity pool is only accessible by someone giving up their pTGC tokens. And once you give up your pTGC tokens, there's a lot of demand going after those tokens, right? The DAO, we did the math just in the last 6 days, Mando. The DAO or the buy and burn of UFO and the DAO and the smart contract, so a combination of all three, has bought and burned over $200,000 of pTGC.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's astronomical.
I think it ended up being 600. Yeah, it was 666 million tokens in the last 6 days have been sent to the dead address. That's over 500 million tokens, and the supply is what, 200 and maybe 85 billion. How's that possible?
But it's actually way less than that though, Prairie, right? Because you have a lot of people in this thing that already have plans to round trip their tokens. You have to consider all the tokens that are being burned every day. You have to consider all the tokens that are being locked out up to 10 years, right? You have to consider new demand coming in. I mean, there's nowhere near the amount of tokens that you think there are.
That's true.
That's just a fact.
Available tokens that you and I can get our hands on.
That's the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters is what exists in LPs that can be purchased, right? The other flip side of that is the only thing that matters is the amount of tokens that can be pushed back into the pool. But when you look at the protocol so far, and you look at the users that have been interacting with the smart contract, we can kind of see the ramifications of the current holders and how they interact with the protocol. I mean, in this space now, there's some large holders, right? Some of them have taken a shit ton of profits. But the thing that you notice is you don't see people just slamming the chart into oblivion. Mm-hmm. Because people in this space, I mean, just watching the charts and people know how to take profits in this protocol. You can't go up to a $350 million market cap on PulseChain, which is a forever down escalator, with just people dumping on you infinitum. There's people that know how to take profits. So when you have good whales and you have a system that's first of its kind, first of its class, that's functioning amazing, as time goes on, people start to recognize that, right? Even the people that are the whales start to recognize that. I'll tell you this right now, because you guys know, I mean, I'm deep into the PulseChain ecosystem, and this is the one token out of all tokens on PulseChain. This is the one token ecosystem where the whales are and larger holders are rethinking the amount that they want to round trip.
That's good news, man.
But I mean, obviously there's a reason why. I'm not just saying that. We literally can sit in here and talk about this stuff for hours about the KPIs, and it's just legitimate information, right? So that's the thing. Like, look at the amount of yield of passive income people are making. So when you ask yourself, oh, wow, okay, PulseChain is at 4 zeros and something, that's below sack rate for the biggest sacrificers, or it just was. Okay, do I think that PulseChain is going to end up back down here at this level? I don't think so. It could, but I don't think so. But even if it did, because it's such a hyper deflationary asset, backed by the assets that are on chain, the argument for the value proposition of this versus that is just off the chain, because it's a performance enhancing protocol on top of the blockchain, right? So if you're going to be in the game, this enhances performance. If you want to get out of the game, then you're going to get out of the game, but the numbers don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to keep in mind, if we get a decent run on PulseChain, obviously that's going to equal volume and volatility on the way up and the way down, and the system is going to be generating revenue off of that on the way up and on the way down, which helps create the foundation wherever that may lie. If PulseChain round trips all the way back down to this exact same price in a year, there's going to be tokens bought and burned. There's going to be APY paid out. There's going to be people onboarded. Definitely going to be people that left as well, right? People come and go in every ecosystem. But there's going to be value generated. And that value gets injected into the chart. And a large portion of that value never can exit out of the chart through that same source. The only way it can exit out of the chart is by an existing holder exiting the chart. And then those tokens either get put back into LP or also bought and burned. And you can kind of ask yourself, like, if PulseChain becomes successful and it goes up and then it comes back down, wherever it lands, where will pTGC land? How much value could be in the DAO smart contract at that point? How much liquidity will pTGC have at that point? What will be the holder base at that time? And how well will the machine be running at that time?
I'll tell you this, man. I got to the point where, and you might want to talk about this, maybe some other people, but I got to the point a couple of months ago where I just got sick of talking about, in my spirit, I got sick of talking about, well, if PulseChain does this, then, we could, I'm like, you know what? Forget PulseChain. Because the product, the pTGC financial product and the ecosystem, it's a standalone, speaks for itself product, right? And so I'm like, you know what? This is a product that no matter what PulseChain does, I think is probably more attractive than anything else in crypto. I mean, what are you going to get out of Bitcoin? What are you going to get? As long as PulseChain is a legitimate blockchain, right? As long as it's not going anywhere, which it's not, right? Let's just say it just stayed at like where it is now forever. It just stayed as a damn stable coin damn near, right? This system technically could go into the billions and billions of market cap if PulseChain stayed where it's at with just real adoption and real capital flows coming in via the revenues that comes into the system and connecting to the new things that are being deployed on PulseChain. And it could literally just go into the billions of market cap with PulseChain just staying in this range of between where it is now and basically the previous all-time highs of the blockchain. The caveat is that, yes, if PulseChain does amazing, guys, let's just be real. If PulseChain does amazing, pTGC is going to be one of the biggest damn cryptos in crypto. Mm-hmm. But I like to think in terms of without that, because how much bigger will it be if PulseChain actually becomes that, right? Anyway, I'll get off that soapbox.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, man. No, it feels good to be in a system to where we can actually win games for ourselves, right? We're not dependent on someone else, your MVP, coming in and winning the game for you. Sometimes he's out and he's sitting on the sideline, but it feels good to be in a scenario where our own community can make shots. Our own community can actually change each other's lives on its own, and it's not dependent on an external figure doing it for us. And it's not even really us even doing it for us alone. We also have a really cool machine to lean on to help us along the way. So it's not only based on the human interaction and the human onboarding in the community itself. It gives us a good foundation and basis to use to our benefit. Just like if you were to have a job to do in the real world, you would want the right tools to do so. It would make the job easier for you. Well, the same thing works here. We all have a job to do. We want to change our families' lives. We want to make our lives better so we can spend our time with our family and our friends and be somewhat financially free. Well, we want to be set up with the right tools to make that the most possible. And I believe pTGC and UFO are some pretty good damn tools for doing so. Well, yeah, of course, if the blockchain becomes successful, like you said, Mando, mathematically, it's pretty much programmed to shoot this thing up into the top tokens that exist in all of crypto. But you don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, you can't make Richard do anything, or you can't force adoption to the chain. We can work towards that adoption. But what is cool is we do have our own specific asset, which is specifically designed to amplify price appreciation, basic economics, supply and demand. And we have tons of ground we can cover on our own. And we can actually change each other's lives just with this product alone without the blockchain ultimately doing anything. And that feels pretty good. It's pretty empowering.
Well, it just proves that the system does exactly what it was designed to do, and that it's not dependent or contingent on, PulseChain go up and then we do something, because that's been proven false. And I'm going to say this one last thing, Prairie, and you're the numbers guy. If people knew how much profits has already been paid out to the community from the pTGC ecosystem, they would shit their freaking pants. Pardon my French. And because I know the numbers, and I think to myself, I know what this system, I know the storms that this system has already weathered. I know the amount of profits that's been taken out. I know the amount of attacks that it's dealt with. I know the amount of copycats that's come out against it. I know the amount of people that left the system to go over here and to go over there and to do all these things. Most of the time they lose all their money. So because I know how much of a beast, of a Hulk the system is, based on what I've experienced and I've witnessed the system, you know, it's like, you know, it's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can hit, and keep moving forward. That's the perfect illustration of the pTGC ecosystem. And the fact that it's been able to weather all of those storms, plus on a forever down blockchain, and we're at $100 million market cap, guys, I don't think people quite understand the reality of that.
That's heavy. That really is. And here's another new thing that we're all coming to terms with in a good way, is that the DAO has been stacking up treasury funds. And so now, just like any good person has a savings account or a retirement account, now our DAO has its own savings account. And I don't know what exactly we were doing with it before, probably LP ads, burning tokens, and all that. But it tells me that we're a stronger asset now, because we're with wisdom able to hold something in our back pocket to use strategically. And it's not a small sum. 350 grand. That's not a small sum for this small ecosystem. And that to me is very exciting and bullish for our future. And I'm excited to see that potentially even grow to more hundreds of thousands and perhaps maybe even millions.
Well, I mean, think about it, Barry. I mean, I don't know exactly what the total amount of Pulse that is owned by the protocol that's not injected yet into the protocol is. And whether it's 300, 400, 500 grand, I mean, I don't know. But every double, just imagine, every double is, let's just put it at 500,000. Just round it up, whatever. Mm-hmm. Every double for PulseChain, 500,000, 500,000, 500,000, 500,000. It's just literally, it's like a massive strategic reserve that with every double, it just doubles the amount of purchasing power for the system, plus the fact that new Pulse never stops coming in.
Yep.
And 100% of that Pulse is 100% forced to go back into the token.
Mm-hmm.
Forever. Like the fact that we're down here with this much LP burned, with that much treasury, this much coins, a billion Pulse chain being taken off the market every day over the last week and a half. It's just nuts. You still got $400,000 in the treasury. One double, it's 800,000. Another double, it's 1.6 million. And the Pulse just keeps coming in. It's laughable.
It's almost like we need to start touting, you know, not only do we have our LP, our millions of dollars in LP, it's our millions in LP plus our little savings account over here that we can use strategically, our strategic reserve.
Well, no, it's a very serious system. You know, that's why you dedicated so much of your life to it since you've been introduced to it, Prairie.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Charles, do your own research, says an easy 10x on PulseChain, and that 350,000 is 3.5 million. That's just a 10x on PulseChain.
Yeah, and I mean, think about this. If you go to that PAMP,
mm-hmm.
what is the whole PAMP calculator thing?
Yes.
And you just do the whole, inject 3.5 million into the entire PulseChain ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
You can do a custom split with
That's
Hex.
True.
You know, you can do whatever you want. Let's just do 3.5 million there with that. Yeah, and that 8.85x is Hex.
Yeah.
It 2x's the entire. Basically, you get a mean of like a 4.5x of the whole PulseChain ecosystem with a $3.5 million injection.
Yeah, man.
So just imagine that just going into pTGC.
We can find that out pretty easily too, Mando.
If you know, you know, bro.
All right, we're doing it right now. Calculate the impact of $3.5 million into PTDC. That'd be a 4.5x. Yeah. Who would turn that down? Not a prairie banana. What about if you put 3.5 million into UFO just for funsies? 3.5.
Where are you getting that? Where are you getting where do you get that information from to do it for PC?
Look into ptgc.com, the Moon Math 2.0 tab at the top.
Oh, that's a.
You found it?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you on Spaces on Saturday?
I don't know. I can't remember. I think so.
Okay. Let me show you something really cool, if you don't mind. Go to your dashboard.
Just give me 1 second.
Kong has incorporated some cool stuff into the lookintoptgc.com site.
Hey, Prairie, I gotta do that. I gotta do that in a second. My son needs me for a minute. I gotta.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to come up? I think Mando's really going to dig this if he hasn't seen it yet. Zen?
We might have went through it in the VC on Thursday. I might have shown them.
Okay.
But we'll show them again.
If he gets back here.
Yeah, gets back here. For anyone listening, we are getting close to we're past the 2 hour mark. So I will be shutting it down here pretty soon, but definitely want to give Banana the opportunity to go through this last thing. We'll see if Mando comes back in 5 minutes or so. If he doesn't, Banana, you can just go through it for everyone. But if you are a listener and you have a question, feel free to come up now. Again, I'm going to be shutting it down here pretty soon. For anyone on YouTube, if you have any questions, feel free to just write them in Banana's comments as well, and we'll answer those before we shut it down for the night.
We might just need to shut it down, Zen. I can walk Mando through it if he hasn't seen it yet. Later.
What was it?
Just go ahead. Just go ahead and do it without me, man. Just no problem.
Okay, so if you go to your fee allocation section on your dashboard at lookintoptgc.com, and then there is a tab that says Show Chart. And if you click on it, you can see the fee allocation for different time frames: 7 days, 30 days, 90, and 180 days. So you can look at 180 days worth of fee allocation. And what's the fee allocation? The burn tokens, the liquidity, what was sent to the DAO, what was sent to holders and stakers. And then you can also look at the volume for whatever kind of time frame you want. It's super cool. And you and you saw that? Okay.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome, man.
You bet. It's worth knowing about, especially if you're talking to other people. If you're onboarding people, shoot, man.
So how do you if you're on Moon Math 2.0, how do I go to if I want to inject $3 million into pTGC, what the price is based on current LPs?
Click in the contract address tab.
Okay.
or in that field, and you'll select the contract for pTGC or UFO.
Okay. And then just put in whatever amount.
Yes. And then calculate. Yep.
It's 5X, man. That's freaking awesome.
I know.
That is neat.
How about a 5X and like a 4-hour candle?
That's without PulseChain doing shit.
See, that's what I mean. I like talking about what pTGC is going to do on its own. On its own. Because anything that the core tickers do, or anything that we're connected does, that's just the icing on the cake, man. You know?
Yep.
So, but that's all I got, man. If you want to shut it down, Zen, appreciate you hosting the space. Prairie, you guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut it down. My son just jumped off the couch on his head.
Oh, okay.
All right, man.
He's
All right,
hey,
man.
hey, Banana, real quick.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, you said you're talking with Kong.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe you could ask him about, on a few of his sections where it shows the APY, if he can add something that adds, I believe it's times 2.3 is what we earn if you're staked, right?
Yep.
So like a lot of his things show the APY for just holding pTGC, but I think it'd be a cool addition. I think it'd be somewhat simple for him to do if there was a toggle that was like, or just an additional mark that said if you're staked, and even if you're staked and locked, because what we found is if you're staked and locked for 90 days, I think you're earning roughly times 3x, like 3x what you are holding, right?
Right.
Which is plus 200%. So I think it would be a pretty simple ad, and I think anyone who cares about looking at their APY is most likely staked, right? Like if you're into the APY, you're taking it the step further to stake, and if you're just holding and you are in the APY, you should look into how much more you're getting, and I don't think there's really anything that shows you that right now. I know we do the math on our own, but I don't think most people know to even do the math.
Yeah.
Or know how to do the math. So
Right. Okay.
You could bring that up.
Yep. I'm tracking with you. We'll talk about it, and we'll let you know.
Okay, cool. Yeah, guys, I'm gonna shut it down. Thanks for everyone that came up.
Yeah, man. Have a good night.
All right. See you guys. That's so fun. Good night, all. Yeah. Happy Easter +1. That's funny. Yeah, man. Woo! Good times. Happy times. Profitable times. Right? I'll get this back set to. All right, guys. We'll see it. So, voice chat. If you guys want to jump in the voice chat tomorrow, that is at. Get my eyes on it. That'll be at 3 Pacific, and then I'll do an AMA on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Everybody have a great night. See you later. Bye.